Welcome to our Monday night call. It is Monday, July 12th, and I'm Hal Ginsberg. I am the East Region Coordinator, and I'm so excited to be on this call. Our topic is monopolies, what they are doing to America, what we need to do to rein them in. And we really have two outstanding speakers on this topic. We've got Representative David Cicilline from Rhode Island, and he is doing tremendous work on behalf of consumers and labor to protect us from rampant, unchecked monopoly power. We also have Fordham law professor Zephyr Teachout, who has written on this topic, and she is an expert. She has campaigned on it, and she will give us the view from the professor's office. If you are joining us right now, please just go ahead, put your name and where you're calling from in the chat. I will be happy to give you a shout out. We're so excited to have these great speakers with us. Again, I'm Hal Ginsberg. And there we are. I was so glad to see Afrin Tharani in Astoria joining us. You are the first to join us. We've got Jenny in West Virginia. She'll be on the call a little later. Barbara in Columbia, South Carolina. And you are welcome, Afrin. And again, I'm happy to have you with us. And I'm just getting, if you're watching on the social media, just getting everything organized so it'll look nice for you folks on social. We've got Don in Canton, Ohio, Debbie in Cincinnati, Ohio, Eileen in Arizona, Robert in New Orleans, hello Crescent City, Olivia in Indianapolis, Alan, my good friend in South Carolina, Alpana in Seattle, Washington State. Happy to be here. We are happy to have you with us, Robert. Linda in Aurora, Colorado. We've got Steve in Portland, Oregon. So we got folks all over the country. Great to have you with us. We'll be getting going in just a moment. We do want folks to know that we cannot do this without you. We want to keep putting on these great calls. And in order for us to do that, we do need your support. We do ask you if you can become an Our Revolution movement builder. Just click ourrev.us/2021 member. It's in the chat. And we are so happy to have you be part of our team. We'll give you a shout out, and you'll also get a great membership card. So really exciting stuff, and we're so happy to be working with you on this Monday night call. So in just a few moments, we'll get going. Thanks again for joining us, and we can't wait to speak to our two great hosts from our Revolutions national team. We've got Anna Martavishki and Aaron Chappell. I think this is Aaron's first call, so you're getting to hear and see Aaron first time live hosting our Revolutions call. So let's, without further ado, start this call. Aaron Chappell, take it away, please.
Thank you, Hal, and good evening, everybody. My name is Aaron Chappell, and I'm the political director here at Our Revolution, and this is my second time as a host. We're halfway through the year, through 2021, and the progressive movement is as strong as it's ever been. We've got a lot of work to do, of course, but it's so awesome to be a part of Our Revolution and part of this progressive movement. Every Monday night, over 5,000 members from coast to coast join our national call on Zoom, on Facebook, by telephone. And we come here to talk about how we're advancing the political revolution.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Aaron. I am Anna Martavishki. I'm a regional organizer with Our Revolution. I'm based in New Jersey. And for those of you who are new to this call or new to our group, Bernie founded Our Revolution in 2016, so almost 5 years ago. We have actually an anniversary coming up soon. He founded Our Revolution to create a national grassroots movement to continue his fight for justice. And that's what we have been doing for the last 5 years. Our mission is simple. We are organizing a national network of local groups to hold politicians accountable. We are electing progressive champions at every level of government, and we are building a more progressive Democratic Party from the bottom up. Today, Our Revolution is the leading grassroots-funded progressive political action organization in America.
And tonight, our call is going to focus on corporate monopolies. Recently, we asked our members to name their top 5 policy priorities. you see here on the slide, those answers were clear. They want action taxing corporations and the rich and creating good jobs. As we've seen recently in places like the Amazon warehouse in Bessemer, Alabama, to achieve those goals, we're going to have to rein in corporate monopolies. Now, challenging the power of corporations is going to require allies. Tonight, we'll hear from two of those allies. First up will be Representative David Cicilline, who's a leading voice on Capitol Hill on the dangers of monopolies in the tech sector. Next, we'll hear from Zephyr Teachout, a Fordham law professor, expert on antitrust law, and a former candidate for New York governor.
All right, exciting guest tonight and a very timely discussion on corporate monopolies. But before we get started with our guest, I wanted to highlight our amazing New York City progressive champions who are making history. Jumaane Williams, Brad Lander, and our next Brooklyn Borough President, Antonio Reynoso, won, but also 16 Our Revolution endorsed council candidates have won their races, creating the most diverse and progressive city council in New York City ever. For the first time, the council will have a female majority. Very exciting. Our newly elected progressive champions are making history. In most cases, our young woman of color, Shahana Hanif, is poised to be the first Muslim woman and one of the first South Asian members in the New York City Council alongside Felicia Singh. Crystal Hudson is the first openly gay Black woman to win a seat on the council. And I want to give a shout out to all of our members who worked so hard to make these victories possible. I want to mention quickly Rapi in Queens, George in Brooklyn, Brian on the Upper East Side, Earl in Harlem, and many more. Our chapter members worked so hard with NIPAN and local groups who were out in force helping our candidates win. The wave of progressive wins across the country continues to grow strong.
That's right, Anna Marta, because on the West Coast, we made even more gains as we continue to build a deep bench of progressive elected officials. Our Revolution Oregon members elected 14 progressive champions to school boards around that state, flipping the board from a conservative majority to a progressive one in the state's second largest school district in the Salem area. Some of you may have dialed into the Oregon Organized to Win call and heard them talk about their plans to stand up to right-wing hysteria on critical race theory and the privatization of public education. These newly elected progressive champions will be a voice for progressive education policy in their communities, and who knows, you may see their names on up-ballot races in coming years. That's how we continue to build power and win. Great work, Our Revolution Oregon. Now, Our Revolution members are doing great work, but this can only happen with your support. Because we don't take corporate money, we rely on our sustaining members to support our work. If you're already a movement builder, thank you. If not, please sign up today. You can sign up on the link in chat or press *3 if you're on the phone and an operator will take your information.
All right, yes, become a member because we survey our members and we ask them what's important to them. In our call last week, we mentioned a survey that we sent out to hundreds of thousands of our members, those sustaining members that I just talked about. And one of the top 5 priorities of our members is, not surprisingly, fighting climate change. So the fossil fuel industry's stranglehold on our climate needs to end. That's clear to everyone, and it needs to end now. We are pressuring Congress to strip the fossil fuel industries of its $15 billion in taxpayer-funded annual subsidies as part of the upcoming infrastructure package. We have been hammering that message over and over. We sent a letter signed by more than 500 groups to Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer. We rallied outside the US Capitol along with a giant smoky dinosaur that you can see in the picture there. And more importantly, with Representatives Ilhan Omar and Ro Khanna, who underlined the message with 4 simple words: no climate, no deal. And in light of the massive Exxon lobbying scandal here in New Jersey, our groups, and you see me in the picture there, held 2 actions over the weekend outside Congressman Frank Pallone's office to demand real climate action. Congressman Frank Pallone's Clean Future Act is a failure of climate leadership as it stands right now because it classifies frack gas still as clean energy, and that's unacceptable. Frank Pallone and Congress need to show political courage, and they need to stand up to big oil. It is past time to stop paying fossil fuel companies to burn the planet.
Now, imagine if that $15 billion in fossil fuel subsidies instead went to help fund universal health care. Maybe then healthcare workers wouldn't be on strike against low pay and dangerous working conditions. If you haven't been following the news, nurses at a hospital in Worcester, Massachusetts, owned by Tenet Healthcare, have gone on strike. And this giant for-profit company that runs more than 600 facilities nationwide is threatening to permanently replace the strikers. Our Revolution's executive director, Joseph Gevargiz, is drawing comparisons to the 1981 PATCO strike, when then President Reagan fired striking air traffic controllers. But with the Tenet Healthcare strike, Biden has an opportunity to undo that Reagan legacy of union busting.
All right, while fossil fuel companies and for-profit healthcare conglomerates continue to get favored treatment, those who truly deserve representation in our democracy are being left out. Shameful news out of New Jersey, my home state here, where state leaders have cut a backroom budget deal without public input, and the resulting budget will fail to meet the needs of working people, the needs of our immigrant communities, and the needs of the people of color in the state. Our Revolution New Jersey leaders have called out New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy and other state reps for failing those who have been hit hardest by the pandemic. We will keep fighting the good fight here in New Jersey. We will continue to stand with our most impacted communities as we demand recovery for all and justice for all. And wherever there is unchecked abuse, our Revolution members are standing up to fight. And we still have so much to do when it comes to the unconscionable abuses in the criminal justice system. Luckily, we have our Revolution board member, Keith Ellison, firmly in our corner, spotlighting an agenda for criminal justice reform in the pages of the Washington Post. If you haven't read it yet, spend a few minutes checking it out after today's call.
Now, as we said, the focus of our call tonight is corporate monopolies. And our first guest is Representative David Cicilline, who chairs the Antitrust Subcommittee in the House, which conducted an extensive investigation last year, culminating in a nearly 500-page report on tech monopolies. Following this report, Cicilline introduced a set of bills that would prohibit major tech platforms from selling their own products, from acquiring new companies just to squash competition. It would raise money for antitrust enforcement and more. Our second featured guest will be Zephyr Teachout, who essentially wrote the how-to manual, a book called Break 'em Up, Recovering Our Freedom from Big Ag, Big Tech, and Big Money. As Bernie wrote in the foreword to her book, we need a grassroots bottom-up movement that organizes against monopoly power in communities across this country. In these pages, you'll learn how monopolies and oligopolies have taken over almost every aspect of American life and what can be done to stop that trend before it's too late. Then we'll get a report from the ground in West Virginia from our own organizer, Jenny Craig. But first, we're excited to be hearing from Representative Cicilline. Representative Cicilline's committee recently held a markup of those 6 bills, and after a marathon all-night session, somewhat miraculously passed them all. Welcome to the call, Representative. Can you tell us a bit about your investigation and the bills that you're working to pass?
Yes, thank you, Aaron. It's great to be with you and with everyone on the call. Almost 2 years ago, the Antitrust Subcommittee opened up what would become a 16-month investigation, really a top to bottom review of the state of competition in the digital marketplace. This investigation included 7 congressional hearings, the production of nearly 1.3 million internal documents and communications, submissions from 60 antitrust experts, and interviews with more than 240 market participants. Our final report, which the Judiciary Committee approved last month, found that Amazon, Apple, Facebook, and Google each hold monopoly power over significant sectors of the economy. These powerful corporations control access to key channels of distribution in the digital economy. And they use this control to maintain their own power by spying on rivals, copying products, and buying out competitors. And even right now, these modern day robber barons are growing their power through anti-competitive means. America is in this extraordinary monopoly moment. There's really a crisis of competition in the digital marketplace. And it's really a crisis that impacts our entire society. We see this crisis in small businesses that have had designs for products stolen by Amazon, in developers forced to pay huge fees to sell an app on the iPhone, in website owners who've lost traffic to Google because it unfairly advantages its own products and services, and in Facebook users whose privacy is violated routinely with no recourse or alternative in sight. This monopoly moment that we are in is really holding back our entire economy. And we can't really unleash the full power of American ingenuity when everyday Americans are competing with one arm behind their back. And that's why we outlined a bipartisan agenda for a stronger online economy with opportunity, innovation, and choice. This agenda is built around 5 bills that will restore competition in the online economy. The American Innovation and Choice Act, which prohibits discriminatory conduct by dominant platforms, including a prohibition on self-preferencing and picking winners and losers online. The Platform Competition and Opportunity Act, which prohibits acquisitions of competitive threats by dominant platforms, as well as acquisitions that expand or entrench the market power of online platforms. The Ending Platform Monopolies Act, which eliminates the ability of dominant platforms to leverage their control over across multiple business lines to self-preference and disadvantage competitors in ways that undermine free and fair competition. The Access Act, which promotes competition online by lowering barriers to entry and switching costs for businesses and consumers through interoperability and data portability requirements. And finally, the Merger Filing Fee Modernization Act, which updates filing fees for mergers for the first time in 2 decades to ensure that the Department of Justice and the Federal Trade Commission have the resources they need to aggressively enforce the antitrust laws. Republicans and Democrats don't agree on a lot these days, but we do agree that we need to take on these unregulated big tech monopolies. And I'm proud that we were able to pass out all of these bills with bipartisan support out of the Judiciary Committee. But we really need the help of all the folks on this call, because as you can imagine, these technology monopolies have all the interest in the world in maintaining the status quo that has generated profits unseen before in the history of the world. And so they are fighting against these reforms in every way possible. And we're going to really need the American people to speak out loudly and clearly to members of Congress about the importance of this work. And I'm privileged and delighted to have the opportunity to be with you tonight.
Ooh, thank you, Congressman. That is a lot of information, a lot of bills you've got going. If we don't do something, we know these big tech billionaires are just taking this money to outer space, but they're going to fight hard. We know they're going to fight hard, and we'll be trying to peel off Democrats. We already know there's resistance in the California delegation, where a lot of these companies are based. So can you tell us, what can we do to support this work, and what's the biggest obstacle we're going to have to overcome?
Well, the biggest obstacle we're going to have to overcome is the enormous power of these monopolies. I mean, these monopolies have tremendous economic power, and we know with tremendous economic power comes tremendous political power. And they are going to fight as hard as they possibly can to maintain this ecosystem that is allowing them to engage in anti-competitive behavior, to favor their own products and services, to grow their market dominance, to crush competitors, to hurt workers and consumers. So we have to show the power of the people in this country, and members of Congress need to hear that their constituents expect us to do something about this. The polling is clear. The American people expect Congress to rein in big tech, but members of Congress need to hear from their constituents about why it matters in their lives. And, we're going to fight this and be sure that we're successful and get these bills through the Senate and to the president's desk so we can restore competition in the digital marketplace once and for all.
So in the chat right now, we are sharing a link to a petition. Everyone should sign a petition to stop corporate monopolies, and then we can engage further on next steps there, but start with signing that petition. And now, Congressman, can you break that down a little bit more for our members here tonight? What does this mean to folks on the phone, on Zoom with us? How are we being harmed by these monopolies?
Well, we know that the reason that we work so hard to have good competition policy is because we know from experience that competition produces innovation, it produces better quality, it produces more choices, it gives consumers more opportunity to make selections. And what we're seeing with the kind of monopoly power that these platforms have is, higher prices. They're taking away the privacy interests of consumers. They're taking away choice. They're devastating small businesses by either copying their products and services or acquiring them to crush competition. We heard throughout the investigation these really disturbing stories from small businesses about their ability or inability really to compete because of the dominance of these large technology platforms. So it results in less innovation, less choice, harm to consumers, harm to quality, and significant harm to small businesses and to workers. And so competition is something we have for a long time understood we need to promote and protect. And that's why monopolies are inconsistent with that. They're also inconsistent with democracy that's sort of concentrated economic and political power is inconsistent with a democracy. That's been the battle of our country since its founding. And it's time we take on these modern day robber barons and really restore real competition in the digital marketplace to protect consumers and small businesses and innovators and entrepreneurs rather than large monopolies.
You are getting a lot of support in the chat right now for those comments, and other folks seconding your use of robber barons in this case. Now, much like in the voting rights case, another priority, a top priority of ours right now, we know that we have to defend democracy and fix voting rights in this country. And it's clear, the courts have made clear that they are not going to help us on this, right? We have to pass laws. So we just saw a pair of rulings dismissing federal and state antitrust lawsuits against Facebook. These new laws, is this enough to overcome that resistance from the courts and fix these problems? And the last question I'll give to you is just, what's a timeline right now for action?
Yeah, these bills will be transformative. They will make sure the agencies have the resources they need to do enforcement. They'll prevent mergers that acquire competitors or crushing competitors. They will prevent platforms from favoring, self-preferencing, picking winners and losers. So this is a great suite of bills. This is the first step. We're going to do more legislation that applies to antitrust broadly, not just technology. But the next step is to make sure we have the votes in the House to bring these bills to the floor and send them over to the Senate. And we're working hard with all of my colleagues to make sure they understand the urgency of getting this done. We make sure the bills are in their final form before we bring them to the floor. But we have work to do because sadly, these technology companies spend a lot of money in Washington, and they spend a lot of money on campaigns to try to influence the legislative process. We've got to fight against that.
Well, we're going to work hard to make sure your fellow representatives hear from the ground as well. Representative David Cicilline, Congressman of Rhode Island, thank you so much for your leadership on this issue. Thank you for being here with us tonight. And we look forward to continuing to work with you to get these bills.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
All right, thank you, Representative Cicilline, and to all of you who are on the call, whether online, on Zoom, or social media, or on the phones. You need to know that we fight corporate power with grassroots and people power, right? So become a sustaining member of our revolution today. Help us in this work. We are funded by small dollar contributions, donations from our members, $5 at a time. So please sign up for a monthly membership, sustaining monthly membership. Right now, the link is in the chat for you, or you can press *3 on the phone and an operator will take your details. Again, sign up. Let's fight corporate power with grassroots power. All right, our next speaker is Zephyr Teachout. Very excited about Zephyr. I follow her work in New York and I learned a lot from her. She's a political activist and former political candidate from New York who is an associate professor of law at Fordham University currently. She's an expert on antitrust law, the author of Break Them Up, Recovering from Our Freedom from Big Agriculture, Big Tech, and Big Money. And of course, she stood up to the corporate abuses of the oil and gas industry in her historic run for New York State governor. She made it a signature issue of her campaign and helped pave the way for New York State's fracking ban. Prove that you can have an immense impact, sometimes just by being in the race. So welcome to the call, Professor. We are now 40 years into the experiment of letting giant corporations accumulate more and more power and wealth. Last week, though, President Biden made a historic speech in which he basically said that the era of corporate power is over. What can you tell us about this statement? What is its significance?
Well, it's great to be on. Great to see you, Anna Marta. Great to be with so many extraordinary activists. And Anna Marta, I am going to talk about that. But before Congressman Cicilline leaves, I just want to underline how historic his work has been. Oh, hey, thank you, David. Break him up. How historic his work has been in taking on corporate power in every step of the way. So the hearing that you mentioned before was an epic hearing. It was Congress doing what it rarely does, which is use its full power to force leaders to come to the table and answer hard questions with documents in lawmakers' hand, ready to fact check those Congress members. And the bills that he and others have just introduced, these led the introduction of, is built on it has been built on those investigations. But we really need your help right now. It is extraordinary that these bills passed through markup on a bipartisan basis. It's like two things that progressives can, cheer to the rooftops happened with Republican support recently. Both Lena Khan being appointed being confirmed to be on the FTC, later appointed to be the chairperson, and then these bills. But along with bipartisanship, there's some weird opponents too. So as progressives, don't assume that your Congress member who you think, hey, I know she's going to be fine, knows how critically important this is to break the stranglehold of tech power. Call your Congress member. Make sure they know that there's energetic grassroots support. I mean, I'll be blunt, somebody who I love and work with all the time, Congressman Ro Khanna. He needs to hear from members here saying, hey, we got to get these things through. So I just want to underline the importance, because right now I was talking to a friend, probably 50 big tech lobbyists whose sole job is to wander the halls and socialize and call in favors. And there are about 7 people from nonprofits who all have day jobs, and they're not wandering the halls. So we can't do this without grassroots support. So please be making those calls. And I've seen some comments in the chat that are really important, and I want to broaden this out to talk about the president's speech. But when we're talking about breaking up Amazon's stranglehold of power, that affects workers. When we are talking about breaking up Facebook's choke point and YouTube's choke point of power, that means that there's freedom for your local journalism to breathe that it doesn't have right now. So the impacts on regional inequality, on inequality in this country, on the impacts on workers, and on the small businesses that are being choked by these giants is enormous. And it's a really important suite of bills. So, and I know I went on a little bit, but I do want to say that we had a historic speech a couple days ago. Joe Biden, not just speech and action. And I'll be the first to say, I was surprised, thrilled, surprised, but really surprised. Biden came out did 3 things. Here's the 3 things that the president did. 1, he issued 72 directives to agencies. Some are independent agencies. Some are those, people that have to listen to him, saying, you got to do rulemaking to do something about this corporate power. You got to make sure that people have access to over-the-counter hearing aids. You got to ban non-compete clauses. Talk about anti-competitive business practices. 72 directives, really throwing down the gauntlet. The second thing he did, which is also really important, is he set up a council to ride herd on those agencies to make sure they follow through. Because they are going to be drowned in corporate cash and corporate lobbying to say, hey, slow down. Don't do anything here. We don't really, really pushing against this. That's important. But the third thing he did, and we can't underline this enough, is just echoing your language, Anna Marta. He said that we have had a 40-year experiment that has failed. This is an extraordinary moment. President Biden says, the 40 years, hi, I'm in New York City, if you can hear in the background. The 40-year experiment with the way that we have approached really lax antitrust enforcement has failed, and it has led to inequality, and it has hurt workers. It has hurt, it is a failed experiment, and we are turning the page on that. That's a major moment because it is an expression of an economic theory. I don't even want to use the word theory, an economic reality that when you allow, and you guys all know this, when you allow massive concentrations of power, 500,000 mergers globally in the last decade. These are mergers of giants. I know many of you have been fighting Monsanto, fighting Amazon, fighting in your fighting big cable. These massive mergers, that leads to the great sucking sound of money, dignity, and power from the people of this country to a few elites who are then plowing that money back into lobby. So it was a really historic moment, but we got to back it up. We got to hold him to it. And he expressed the Biden philosophy is we have to take on corporate power if we're going to achieve greater equality. Executive orders are great. They're really, really important. They're really significant, but we also need the legislation. So we need those paired together.
Right. So a little history lesson maybe for our progressives on the call. Can you share some examples from the past of progressives successfully challenging corporate power and current monopolies?
Well, it's a let's see if we can do Shakespeare in 30 seconds here. It's there's this Tea Party, not the Tea Party that the sort of modern right wing wants you to think about, but is a fight against the British East India Tea Company, and it's a great example of how corporate power becomes dangerous governing power with something that goes back several hundred years. But let's talk a little more recently. Teddy Roosevelt gets a lot of credit, but the most significant moment of antitrust, not just enforcement. It's not just enforcing the laws. It's a vision of saying we are going to support workers and small businesses against concentrated capital. It's saying we got to support people organizing and make it harder for capital to organize. I mean, in some ways, that's what we're talking about here, right? Is the second term of the FDR administration. And in that second term, in order to take on the stranglehold of financiers and centralize dangerous, fragile, abusive corporate power, FDR made breaking that stranglehold central to his economic philosophy. And you see that in breaking up big companies, in a massive multiple-fold rise in enforcement action. So that's where we see what the agencies can do, what the Federal Trade Commission can do. You also see it in legislation that embodies this view that we should have cooperatives lighting up the country and not just give some money to Tesla to, as India Walton talked about so powerfully in her campaign, the way that we should be subsidizing decentralized economic thriving activity, not handing over checks to Elon Musk. And so I think of that as the most important moment. And a reason I want to underline that is because I think we always think of Roosevelt, of Teddy Roosevelt. But honestly, it's an ongoing battle. I mean, there were really aggressive, amazing anti-monopolists fighting in the 1880s, and they fought, and frankly, they lost. But they were talking about the importance of workers having power in their workplace against the corporate monopolies that were trying to control them. They were talking about the relationship between illegitimate corporate power and illegitimate white power. And they were fighting for a vision where you didn't allow a few to just suck and extract and manipulate and control. So it's not a modern fight. But right now, somebody in the chat was talking about the second Gilded Age. We have inequality levels that are higher than the Gilded Age. It's not, we're not exaggerating when we're saying we're like the Gilded Age. It's the inequality is worse than the Gilded Age. So it's a crisis moment. And the sequencing that the congressman talked about is really important because you have this really rare moment where you have Republicans who are signing on to taking on this big tech, but we all know it's about big ag. We all know it's about anti-monopoly more broadly.
Great. So speaking of workers having power, and you mentioned India Walton, I want to take you off topic just for the last question of your segment. What are you most excited about in the New York City elections that just concluded the primary?
Oh my gosh, it was killing me because like right now I'm deeply involved in New York City politics. There's New York City elections, and in the middle of the night, the tech bills are being debated, and I was deeply involved in both, and I felt like I couldn't give my full attention to either as much as I would have liked. I'm really excited about the wave of progressives who were elected. We are going to need, and I'm really excited about the deep grassroots support for those progressives who are going to be essential to making change in city government. So speaking of anti-monopoly, I'll give a shout out to Brad Lander, who won and has been fighting against gig worker abuses in New York City. And this is important because we can work on these issues at the local level, at the state level. In New York State, just this term, New York State just passed a pretty amazing, Senate. We still got a long way to passage, one chamber. A pretty amazing anti-monopoly law. So it's happening at all levels. I'm really excited that it looks like a majority of city council members are going to be women, the incredible diversity and the real success of ranked choice voting, which is both a joy to see and a joy to be a part of, because we could be celebrating different candidates while supporting others.
Absolutely. That was our experience as well. Well, thank you so much for being here. This was so great. I enjoyed this conversation. And I'll put the link in the chat for our attendees. Again, as Zephyr said, progressives need to take action. So sign this link. Let's fight corporate monopolies together. Thank you so much again, Zephyr and Representative Cicilline. Aaron, back to you.
Thank you, Anna Marta, and Representative Cicilline and Zephyr Teachout. Remember, we can also find the link to become a movement builder in the chat, or press *3 to connect to an operator and become a member now. And for our last speaker tonight, we're going to Wheeling, West Virginia to hear from our revolution organizer in West Virginia, Ginny Craig, about a particular corporate monopoly that's threatening good union jobs in her state. Ginny, tell us what you've been up to.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron. So unfortunately, the situation here in West Virginia is quite dire. Mylan Pharmaceuticals has been a staple in West Virginia, in the Morgantown, West Virginia community for about 6 decades, over 60 years. Mylan Pharmaceuticals produces billions of generic drug pharmaceuticals, and these are life-sustaining drugs. So these are things like thyroid medication, seizure medication, and they've been producing them safely for over 6 decades, domestically and safely. They employ about 1,500 workers, a little over 1,500 workers. These are good-paying jobs. These are good-paying union jobs. Many of the workers are organized with United Steelworkers. And unfortunately, in July of 2019, the workers at the Mylan Pharmaceutical Factory found out that Mylan was going to go through a merger with Viatris, which is the Upjohn division of Pfizer Pharmaceuticals. And shortly after that, actually just before Christmas of this year, this past Christmas in 2020, those workers who have dedicated their lives, many of them working at the pharmaceutical factory for several decades themselves, found out on a Zoom call right before Christmas that they would no longer be employed after July 31st of this year, because those jobs were going to be sent overseas to India and to Australia. And so because of this corporate healthcare monopoly, who's taken federal government money, because they've chosen their bottom line and corporate greed, they're going to be leaving these workers behind in West Virginia. These workers are, again, a staple in their community. These are good paying jobs, far above the median average salary in West Virginia. We're one of the lowest median salaries. And so these workers are going to be faced with a real serious choice. Do you stay and try to continue to live and to work in the state that you love, that you've given so much to, and try to make ends meet by taking 2 and 3 jobs? Or do you leave, like so many folks here in my state have been forced to do? In fact, when the census numbers came out, we have the highest rate of population loss of any state in the country. And so it's just absolutely dire. We've been working with the workers. We've been organizing them. We've held town halls, and we've been screaming really from the rooftops and trying to get our senators, particularly Senator Manchin, and as well as Senator Mercapito, to listen and to step in and to do something. And truly, too, we need to hold the Biden administration accountable for their promises to American workers. And we talk about building back better, but we need to make sure that workers here in America have protections, and that corporations can't exploit their workers and take federal government tax money and not be good stewards of that, not invest in American workers and ship these jobs overseas.
So, Jenny, you're telling us at the tail end of a global pandemic in which this country scrambled to ensure production and supply chains of PPE, of vaccines, we're letting one of the last important major domestic pharmaceutical manufacturers and all those skilled workers, these are like the last people in the country that know how to do this work, and we're just letting that go, and no one's going to stop this. We have the most powerful man in America as a representative from your state. What can we do? What's going on?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, Senator Manchin has such power right now and influence in Washington. And you said it really succinctly. Like, we just came out of a global pandemic. We're still fighting the effects of COVID and will be for a while to come. And if anything, the lesson that we should have learned in shortages of PPE and shortages of medication and ventilators and all of these things, we need to be producing our own medication here in the United States. This is not only are we losing 1,500 jobs in Morgantown, this is the last generic drug manufacturing company left in the United States. And that poses a huge national security risk. What if we get into another situation, another global pandemic, hopefully not ever in our lifetimes? What if we go to conflict with some of these countries, these nations that what if for some reason we don't have access to these medications? I'd like to also point out that in the 6 decades that Mylan has produced medications, they've done it safely with 0 recalls. We're not going to be insured those same protections when medication's not produced here in the United States. And so, yeah, if nothing else, if we learn nothing from the pandemic, it's the importance of producing our own medications safely and domestically here in the United States. And what Mylan does, Viatris now, but what the Mylan pharmaceutical plant has done for West Virginia is provide these good paying jobs with access to unions, and in turn has generated enormous economic growth and wealth in the community. And these are folks who give back to the community. These are people who invest in and help build Habitat for Humanity homes. The Women of Steel, organized for United Steelworkers out of the local in Morgantown, do tremendous charity work. And this company has been allowed to devalue these workers who have done everything they can to give back to their community, to be good workers. In fact, talking about the pandemic, the Viatris pharmaceutical plant turned on a dime and started producing hydroxychloroquine at the height of the pandemic, and thinking and hoping that would be a therapeutic solution for COVID-19 patients. They produced those around the clock. They put in time, and they're still working. They're still working, going to work every single day because they know, at least for the little bit of time that they have left, if the plant does close, that they're producing life-sustaining medication that Americans need and depend on.
Truly baffling that leaders are letting this happen without a fight. What can we do? What can listeners on this, our members here tonight, do to?
We need to up the pressure on Senator Joe Manchin, on Senator Shelley Moore Capito, and we need to call on the Biden administration to do something about healthcare monopolies. We also need to make sure that if companies offshore jobs, they're not rewarded with federal contract money, with federal tax dollars. Corporations that send jobs to other countries instead of investing in domestic production, investing in American workers with access to unions, again, so important that for safety, we need to make sure that they don't get to take federal tax dollars. And if they do, then they not be allowed to have federal tax dollars. And Pfizer, of course, parent company with Viatris, has received billions of federal tax dollars during the pandemic and will continue to for years possibly to come.
Yep, Pfizer obviously getting a lot of money from the federal government right now. Well, we're going to share in chat the phone numbers for Joe Manchin, Senator Manchin, and Senator Capito's office in Washington. You can light up those phones, let them know what you think about letting this plant close and losing domestic generic drug manufacturing capacity in this country. Thank you so much, Ginny. We look forward to hearing how this story continues to unfold, and I'm sure we'll be hearing back from you soon.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Jenny. Everyone, well, you heard Jenny. She's amazing. And when she's not organizing in West Virginia to pressure Manchin to end the filibuster, or when she's not fighting to save the local jobs, she's traveling to other states to support our chapters in Virginia, for example, to pass the PRO Act. That's where I met her. She's so valuable to our movement. So please sign up to become a member. Your recurring membership will help us fund other organizers like Jenny in different states so we can continue advocating for progressive policies like challenging corporate monopolies to strengthen our democracy inside the halls of Congress and outside on the streets. The link is going to be in the chat for you to sign up, or press *3. Don't forget, if you're on the phones, and an operator will take your information. Become a member.
And hello, somebody. Our own Senator Nina Turner, progressive champion in a tough campaign for Ohio's 11th congressional seat. Election day is only 22 days away now, Tuesday, August 3rd. Early voting has started, and the Democratic establishment is pulling out all their tricks, desperate to stop her. Nina needs our help. Join our Revolution Ohio's phone banks on Wednesdays and Sunday evenings. To call for Nina, just click on the link in the chat, and we will see you there.
Thanks, Aaron. So everyone, this is one of the most important sections of our call. As always, here we are listing calls to action and our upcoming events and calls. This coming Wednesday, we have a very important call that I would like to highlight. It is a Jayapal call regarding expanding and strengthening Medicare. As you might know, 83% of voters support expanding Medicare to cover hearing, vision, and dental care. This is an immediate priority for progressives in Congress and for progressives in our grassroots chapters. It is crystal clear. Congress must expand Medicare. This is not a replacement for Medicare for all, but it is a big, important step towards Medicare for all. This is an urgent effort. As I said, Representative Jayapal would like Congress to pass an expansion of Medicare that will immediately help 20 more million people to get federally guaranteed health care. This can pass through reconciliation in the next 2 months. So let's put all of our efforts behind this initiative. Progressives must help with this. So join our town hall with Congresswoman Jayapal this Wednesday, July 14th at 8 p.m. July 14th at 8 p.m. The link is going to be in the chat for you to sign up. We also want to generate calls to Congress and petition signatures. So we will share a link for that as well in the chat. So call your senator, tell them that we want Medicare strengthened and expanded, and sign the petition as well.
Yes, thank you, Anna Marta. That is such a critical, that the timing is so critical on this issue. These decisions are being made as we speak here in Washington. I'm going to just back up because this election is also so critical, the most important election this year. I just saw in chat that Diane Morgan from Our Revolution, Ohio, says they've added Tuesdays and Thursdays to calling. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Sunday, you can call for Nina Turner. Most important election of the year. And last announcement, anti-voter laws have been passed in states all over the country. I'm sure you've heard. You told us this is the #1 priority right now. The Supreme Court said this is not their priority. Recent rulings make clear they're not going to act to protect the right to vote. We have to pass the For the People Act. We can't let the Jim Crow filibuster stand in the way. Join us this Saturday, July 17th, the 1-year anniversary of the passing of Representative John Lewis, for the Good Trouble Vigils for Democracy. There'll be candlelight vigils all across the country to demand that Congress act to protect our freedom to vote and rebuild democracy. That link is also being shared in the chat. We'll see you on Saturday at an event near you.
Awesome, thanks, Erin. And I want to give a shout out to Diane Morgan. She's in the chat, and she will be a featured speaker on the Wednesday town hall with Congresswoman Jayapal. So please tune into that. And everyone, this was our Monday night call. I'm so excited to be spending every Monday night with you all. As we usually say, when we organize, we win. Let's close our call strong with a strong chat. When we organize, we win. When we organize, we win. Good night, everyone. See you next Monday.